correction brows for blue eyebrows. So this is before. First of all, we need to get our pigment cup out. For blue eyebrows, we're going to be using the pumpkin corrector, and make sure you mix your pigment very good for the I'm gonna use the pumpkin corrector to correct the ashy blue on the current pigment right now, to just kind of like neutralize it to more like a brownish, you know.
Okay.
And then I'll go over with the target pigment.
Okay, sounds
The
good.
target pigment is espresso 3 drops with blackish brown 5 drops and 1 dilution.
Okay,
To
sounds
dilute the
good.
pigment down to make it look more airy.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So first we're going to start with the outline using the target pigment, 1 point needle, 5600 speed. I'm gonna very lightly and slowly, stroke by stroke, overlapping each other to secure our outline. And remember to stretch the eyebrows, pull the brow up and stretch the brow out in 3-way. So I have my thumb right there and also the other finger to stretch the brows out, and my pinky to stretch it down. And we'll go very slowly with the hole of the needle pointing up, so that way the pigment flows better and the needle just goes in the skin a lot smoother. Remember that in this video I will be speeding up some of the part, but the total procedure for this is about 45 minutes to about 50 minutes. And as you're approaching towards the tail, remember to lighten your hand pressure, because the skin from the arch to the end of the tail is very thin, and the skin is at medium in terms of thickness, is from the arch to mid brow, and then the thickest would be mid brow to the front eyebrows would be the thickest in all 3 areas of the brows. So whenever you're doing anything at the tail, from the arch to the tail, you want to be very careful, because any strong movement, the pigment will stay there for a very long time. And again, I'm doing the outline for the top eyebrow and the front. I know that some people really don't like that square off look in the front, so then for about like 1 centimeter or half an inch in the front, I go very very light-handed, almost feel like scratching the surface, but it's not really scratching. So when you use 1 point needle, you will have to slowly develop the ability to feel the needle. You have to feel the needle scratching the skin. Otherwise, it will just be pretty much flicking and nothing is depositing. And after the scabs are gone, all the pigments go with the scab. So you want to be able to feel the skin. And this is long needle, so it will be sharper than short needle, and therefore it will grab pigment even better or even more. So any light flicking movement will each of the dot will stay. So now that I have finished the outline, I changed my needle to 3RS, and I'm going to use my pumpkin corrector to lightly go over the blue part. Now her eyebrows aren't too bad, but I still like to use the pumpkin corrector because I don't know what type of pigment they used on her brows before. So the pumpkin corrector does have a small amount of titanium dioxide, and titanium dioxide is a little bit of white pigment, so it will create a little bit of a cover up on the old layer, which is that blue hue on the brows that you see. So that's going to provide just enough coverage as long as you don't go over too many times. Don't go over using your 1-point needle, but use the 3RS so that way it gets a more even coverage. And also the pigment still can go into the skin. You just have to be careful not to like scratch the surface too hard. So the speed, the hand movement, and everything is still the same. You still swing it in one direction towards yourself. And remember, it needs to be 3RS needles. Some people in the past in the tattoo industry might be using the 5RS, but in my point of view, I think that's gonna add up too compact, and I like my brows to still be soft and airy. So when I do correction work, I usually just use the 3RS, lightly go over like so. One layer, so that way it provides just enough coverage for me to be able to put another color on the top, so that way not so much of the previous color is showing, so then my target color can show better. And that's the reason why I use the corrector instead of a toner. A toner is a also another like type of correction pigments that actually can be mixed into the pigment. So think of it like a modifier, but a different level of modifier. So you want to only go over the brows about 1 to 2 times very lightly. Don't try to press, don't try to pack, because when you pack pigment into the skin with this layer, the skin might not be accepting a new layer of the skin, which is ultimately going to be your target pigments on her. So now that I finished the first pass a little bit, so I see that the front right here still has the blue hue, so I'm gonna go over the blue part in the front just a little bit. And now that I'm done with the first pass, I'm gonna numb her brow while I'm working on the other brow. So with the left brow, I still use the same speed, which is 5600, but I changed the needle at this point. I'm back to the 1-point needle now to do the outline. There's no possible way that you can do the outline with a large needle configuration, because the line that you create with larger needle configuration will end up to be very, very, very thick and fuzzy, like zigzaggy looking. So I like to do my outline with the 1RL 0.30 needle. And again, really try to watch at my needle movement, how I move the needle, and you can actually see as I'm moving, the pigment is flowing out. And now that I'm done with the outline on the left brow, I have switched my needle to 3RS and using the pumpkin corrector to go over only the blue area. The area that you see that is more saturated than the normal blue on certain parts of the brow, then you might want to do the correction just like one extra layer, just so that way it can take in even more correction pigment. I'm speeding the video right now, but in reality it's slower and the speed is still at 5600. Still one way swing towards myself.
Got my keys, got my coat, got my shoes on. Got my phone, got my bag, got my nails done. You're here, but I'm still alone. I say goodbye to your shadows. Like a moon, you pull me to the shore. But I can't be your ocean anymore. I care, but you don't know how I feel, so I gotta go. Got my keys, got my coat, got my shoes on. Got my phone, got my bag, got my nails done. You're here, but I still know. I see.
As you're getting closer to the front, be careful not to do too much because you don't want the front to become blocky. So again, just kick it out. Go light-handed. And once when you're done, wipe and numb, and then move on to the other brow. And now at this point, I'm using the Target pigment because it looks like her brow is already neutralized. And with this blue, it's not super strong, so it's okay if you do just one pass of the corrector. But for, like I mentioned, for brows that have higher saturation of the previous pigment, you would need to go over more passes of neutralization, maybe 2 passes of neutralization. But I would say the majority of time I only do 1 pass and it would be enough, because again, I don't want to overdo it, because if you overdo it, the brows after after they're healed, they really will reflect your neutralization color. So like say if it's a blue eyebrows and you neutralize with orange too much, then when they come back for touch up, you'll really see more orange than blue. So you really just want to take one step at a time. I would say out of all of my correction cases, and I've been doing this for over 6 years, I would say that maybe 5% of them that I would have to do neutralization the second or the third time. But again, that's a very small percentage. And as you can see right now, I'm wiping, so that way you can see that the color is already turning more brown. Then you know that your neutralization is working. Now, sometimes there's skin that just doesn't show pigment right away. Then you would just have to wait until they're healed, then see what the result is. I would advise you to never try to attempt neutralization all at once. And that's when, it comes to when to say yes and when to say no on correction cases. Like I mentioned, the previous work needs to fade at least 80% in order for you to do neutralization. I would say at fading 80%, you'll probably just need 1 pass of the correction color. But if the saturation is like still pretty strong, let's say 50%, then it really depends on the case. If her shape looks correct, everything looks correct but the color, then I might, and if she really want me to correct, like she can't live with the red eyebrows, for example, then I would make the exception to try to neutralize it for her. But I make it clear that it's not gonna be a one-time thing. It'll probably be at least 2 or 3 sessions for me to neutralize, and because the pigment is still so strong. But again, I only do it if everything else is correct, like the shape, everything else is correct. But I rarely come across those cases. Maybe 1% out of all my correction cases that I see, everything is correct but the color. The majority of time I would have to correct the shape as well.
Again, every time that I say goodbye, every time that I say goodbye, no, I don't like leaving, and I don't believe it. Every time that I say goodbye, every time that I say goodbye, don't like leaving.
And when I'm done with this pass of target color, I just wipe and then I go over it again, just really quickly brush through some parts that I think can have more pigment. I'm not gonna numb her, again, but I'm just gonna go over and see how they're taking. And right now I'm just speeding up the video process, but in reality it's still the same speed, same motion, same hand movement and everything. And remember that as you're getting closer to finishing or seeing that the brow takes the pigment better and better, you want to keep wiping so that way you can see what the true pigment right now is like. And sometimes, they can bleed depending on their skin type and whatnot. But as long as they're, pinpoint bleeding, it should be okay. But as you're getting close to be done, just try to wipe so that way you can see all the pixel clearly to see where it has still missing parts. Then you'll just implant more pigment in that part.
Why can't this moment last forever, Tonight eternity's an open door. No, don't ever stop doing the things you do. Don't go, and every breath I take I'm breathing you. Forever till the end of time. From now on, only you and I. We're going up, 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 up. Euphoria, an everlasting piece of us. A beating love within my heart. We're going up, 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 up. We are here, we're all alone in our universe. We are free, where everything's.
And now I think this brow is pretty good in terms of like neutralization, as you can see the differences between that brow and the left. So I'm just gonna wrap up, finish, numb it, and then go to the other one. And on the left brow right now I'm using the 1-point needle with the target pigment and just go over the whole eyebrows.
Why can't this moment last forever, Tonight eternity's an open door. No, don't ever stop doing the things you do. Don't go, and every breath I take I'm breathing you. Forever till the end of time. From now on, only you and I. We're going up, 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 up. searching for divinity. We're going up, 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 up. Euphoria. You'll never lose a beat of us. A beating love within my heart. We're going up, 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 up. Euphoria.
The front keeping it very airy, and now I'm wiping it to do another pass of my target pigment on the brow. Right now I'm focusing more on the lower bottom outline, just so that way it can be nice and crisp and clear, and then just kind of like fill in, blend it in. And remember that it's completely normal that on correction brows, sometimes you might notice one brow requires more color correction than the other. It's normal. The majority of time, they require about the same amount of time. But for this eyebrow, I think that this side has less saturation of pigment, so this side takes me faster to finish than the other side. And when you feel like the whole eyebrow in general looks like the colors are blended and neutralized, then you just pretty much making the brows sharp and defined looking right now, just adding some finishing touch to it, then it's all good. And don't forget to keep wiping, because you gotta wipe in order to know where's still missing and needs pigment. Most of the time it happens at the front is where we need to like add final finishing touch. And now I'm getting ready to finish the brows. I use the color boost agent, just 1 drop for each brow. Let it sit for about 30 seconds or a little bit longer, so that way all your pixels, all your pigment will set and it will look really nice and pixelated.